Hello everyone, welcome to my kitchen. Today we are going to be cooking Channa Masala or chickpea curry. And just a few things I want to tell you about this dish. It's very versatile. You can make it as spicy or as mild as you like. I'm going to give you a basic recipe and then you can modify it or adjust it to whatever you and your family prefer. And you can also add other things to it. You can use the basic recipe, but then if you want to add more vegetables to it, you can add, I like to add chopped spinach to mine. We won't be adding that today. But just to let you know, this recipe is vegetarian, it is gluten-free, it is dairy-free. So for most people, there are no issues with allergies, and so it's a good one to make. You can make large batches of it, and the longer it cooks, kind of like chili, then the more flavor it will be. So it's a great one to throw in the crock pot, to take to a potluck, or that type of thing. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. First of all, I want to talk a little bit about the chickpeas. So sometimes these are called garbanzo beans, so if you see them listed in different ways, they're basically the same thing. But just to let you know, when I cook this dish, I like to use the dried chickpeas, and I know some people don't like to, and they're kind of intimidated by the dried chickpeas, but just to let you know, it's super easy. And what I like to do is I buy the chickpeas dry, then I soak them overnight, and then in the morning you can just boil them up, cook them up until they're soft. And it takes a couple of hours. You can also, after you soak them, throw them in your crock pot, and then in the evening they'll be soft and then ready to go. If you are in a pinch or you don't like to use that, you can also always use the canned chickpeas. But once you start using the dry and you kind of see the difference between the two, you'll, I think, always go with the dried chickpeas because it's not that much more work. And what I like to do is I like to do a couple batches of it, and then the extra I just put in a Ziploc and throw it in my freezer. And then whenever I want to make more of the Channa Masala, or if I want to make some hummus, or these are great to throw on a salad or to make a salad with, or chop up and make a sandwich with. So it's a lot of different uses. So when you make a whole bunch of it, then you have it on hand when you have the Ziplocs in your freezer, and you're good to go at any time. But again, you can also always use cans. So for this recipe, if you're going to use the cans, you'll have 2 cans of that. Sometimes the cans vary anywhere between 14 and 16 ounces. So this recipe has a lot of give, so it's okay if it's not exactly 16 ounces. If it's a little bit less, it'll be fine. Otherwise, if you're doing the dried, which if you picked up the kit from the Grimes Library, you'll have the dried chickpeas. So again, soak them overnight, and the directions are on the back of the bag. And you can soak all of them, and then, like I said, just save the rest in a Ziploc to use for a later time. So we want to use about 3.5 to 4 cups. Once they have then hydrated and you boiled them, then you want to use about 3.5 to 4 cups of that. So you'll be good to go once you have them boiled. The other things you're going to need for this recipe is you're going to need 1 cup of chopped onion, 1 cup of chopped tomato, and you can use basically whatever tomatoes you have at home. You can use aroma tomatoes. Of course, aroma tomatoes, the thing about those, they don't have a lot of moisture, a lot of water in them, so those are usually good for cooking. But if you just have the regular tomatoes too, you can use those as well. In the summertime, I just use whatever tomatoes I have from my garden. It's not that big of a deal. You'll also want some garlic for this recipe. You'll need 1 tablespoon of minced garlic. You will also need 1 tablespoon of minced ginger. And then as far as the spices, we have, of course, salt. We have about a teaspoon of salt. You can adjust that to how much salt you like. We have 1.5 teaspoons of cumin. We have 1.5 teaspoons of garam masala. A note about the garam masala, you want to be, if your family doesn't like a really spicy food, you can reduce that amount and maybe only use a teaspoon or even less, and you can always adjust the heat afterwards. We also have ground coriander, and then 1/2 teaspoon of turmeric, and then also 1/2 cinnamon stick and 2 cloves. And just a note about that is when you put the cinnamon stick and the cloves in there, when it's done cooking, you want to kind of fish those out and set them aside after it's all done cooking, because you don't want someone to get a big bite of clove or a big bite of cinnamon. So those are the spices you need, and again, you can adjust those depending on the hotness that you want. You can not use as much garam masala. And if you want it extra spicy, you can also throw in some chili pepper. But also too, in the recipe, you can chop up some hot peppers like jalapenos, or if you want something milder, you can put some milder pepper in it. Again, the pepper is completely optional. It won't make or break the dish, depending on what you like. Okay, so you will also need a half a cup of water, and then of course your chickpeas, and then whatever garnishes you want on top after the dish is cooked, and we'll talk about that later. Okay, so to get started, what we're going to do is we're going to heat 2 tablespoons of olive oil in our pan, and we're going to add the 1 cup of onion, and we're going to add the cumin powder, and we're going to cook that for a few minutes, a couple minutes, until the onion becomes translucent and it starts getting fragrant. Then we will add the other spices to it, the garlic, the ginger, and the coriander, the salt, the garam masala, and the turmeric, and we'll cook that down until the onions have caramelized. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and then I'll show you what that looks like. Okay, so we heated the oil, medium heat. We add the onion and the cumin, stirred that up for a couple minutes until the onions were a little translucent and caramelized. Then we added the ginger and the garlic and the other spices and mixed that all really well, cooked it for another minute or so. So it's good to go now. And what we're going to do now is we're going to add our 1 cup of tomato, and we're going to add our half a cup of water, and we're going to stir that really well. And then to that we'll add our chickpeas and bring up the heat a little bit to get it kind of bubbling and bring it to a simmer. So let me do that. We've got our 1 cup of tomato, a chopped tomato. And we got our half a cup of water. And we're going to turn the heat up a little bit and stir that up really well. Okay, and to that we're going to add our chickpeas, so let me grab those. These are our chickpeas that were dry. We soaked them overnight and boiled them, of course. And now they're ready to go. We're going to turn up the heat to medium-high. We're going to stir that up and let it cook on high for a little while it's boiling. And we'll let that cook for a little bit here. And stir it really well and get all that masala mixed into it. If you were closer to the 4-cup amount instead of the 3.5 amount, you might want to add a little more water to it. So maybe another 1/4 cup of water. If you use the 2 smaller cans, or if you did more like the 3.5, just want to make sure that it's all kind of covered in there. Let that cook. We'll let it simmer for about 10, once it comes to a boil, then we'll turn it down and let it simmer for about 10 minutes, and then we'll cover it on low, and we will let it cook for another 15 to 20 minutes until everything is kind of soft and all the flavors are kind of melded together. Okay, so we'll come back in about 20 minutes and check on that. Okay, so our chickpeas cooked now, and remember at the beginning I mentioned about taking out the cinnamon stick and the cloves, so then that way nobody gets a big chunk of those. So you can go ahead and take those out, just put them aside. And I just put it in the crock pot here because I just wanted to mention that you can cook it up for the most part and then put it in a crock pot and just put it on warm. And the longer it simmers, the tastier it will be. It'll, just simmer slowly. And then when you're ready to serve, go ahead and you can have it with crusty bread. You can serve it over rice, quinoa, whatever you like. And then I always like to garnish it with a little tomato and some fresh squeezed lemon, and then if you like some fresh cilantro, if you like mint, whatever kind of herbs you like, parsley, you can go ahead and chop that up and add that in there. And then you're all set to go. Enjoy.